decision. The remaining Branch Davidian cars on the compound were destroyed and moved that day in preparation so the tanks could move freely during the assault. A false sense of confidence was granted that evening to the Davidians when negotiators delivered more.
Right? So they're basically, what they're doing with these tanks for like 30 days is they're preparing for the assault, right? Always understanding there's going to be an assault. They're preparing for the assault. They're clearing away things. They're making it hard. They're preparing the field of battle, right? You see that. We see that, right?
Milk and a typewriter ribbon for Koresh to continue his Seven Seals manuscript, something the FBI knew he wouldn't have a chance to do. The next morning, at 6 a.m. on April 19th, the gas assault started. The negotiators called in to explain what was happening and that they could come out peacefully. In response, Steve Schneider ripped the phone from the wall and smashed it
To
against
the American
front
flag
door.
at the top of the tank.
The barrels
As they
of
attacked
CS gas arrived.
American
but the chemical
citizens
came in powder
on
form
American soil.
and needed to be mixed with the liquid.
On private property.
The liquid chosen was methylene chloride, another highly flammable compound that is also lethal. You may know it by its other name, paint stripper. The delivery method chosen was to use tanks to poke holes in vital parts of the building, tearing some sections down entirely, and pump the deadly mixture inside. Over the next 6 hours, they filled the compound. The Branch Davidians tried to fire back and defend themselves, but it was useless against the heavily.
Okay, this is where my brain hurts from this fucking thing. Like, there's nobody I like here, okay? There's innocent children, women, and men in that building. Right? There are. I mean, are they innocent in everything? No. But they're not David Koresh, okay? David Koresh was a fucking monster. But he's one of 100 people in the building. I don't like the religious fanaticism. I don't like any of that stuff. I don't like the cultism and all those things. I don't enjoy any of that. And they had illegal guns, and they had illegal firearms and hand grenades and all that. And they were complicit in the abuse of children, the sexual abuse of children. And yes, all of that's true. So I don't, but there's some innocence there. It doesn't mean that they deserved what they got. Okay. But I don't enjoy them. But holy fuck, I hate the government in this. This is why this thing is I have such conflict with this particular event in American history, is because I basically hate and have empathy for everybody on all fucking sides. And it just causes me so much fucking internal like angst, right? Like, fuck the ATF and fuck the FBI, but fuck David Koresh and fuck those parents. I mean, it's like they're just rolling in with tanks though, shooting deadly fucking gas into the building.
Armored tanks. They tried to create Molotov cocktails with the gas they had left.
They did.
In hopes to use it when the compound was finally breached, only adding more flammables to the hellish conditions within. They attempted to protect themselves from the massive amounts of gas surging into their home from multiple areas by strapping on gas masks. Unfortunately, these were useless for the children inside, as they were too large to seal against their small faces.
Poor kids.
The children were rushed to the underground bunker in an attempt to avoid exposure, but the thermal imagery being used by law enforcement planes above meant there was nowhere to hide. Gas began being pumped into the bunker from above before a tank rolled over it and crumbled the concrete roof down on top of those inside, killing many children within. As the tanks moved around the compound, the FLIR, or forward-looking infrared cameras on the planes above captured what looked like gunfire coming from agents on top of the tanks and in other spots around the building. The tanks tore into the gym, not to poke holes, but to destroy the structure entirely,
Right.
maiming and viciously killing those within with their tank treads, something that can be seen from later autopsies that identified large portions of their bodies ripped away. One piece.
Yeah, we just rolled in with fucking tanks. Don't tell me the U.S. government doesn't do shit like this. Same thing that, I mean, we do it in other countries. This is when it happened in our fucking country, right? We do this shit in other countries, right? We did it in our country to our citizens. Law breaking or not, they fucking rolled over that bunker with those children in it and crushed the roof down on top of them, right? They did that. They knew they were doing that. It's not like they didn't know the fucking bunker was there. They'd been outside for 51 years doing recon, 51 days doing recon. They absolutely knew what they were doing. They were just done with it.
Jammed the tread of a tank, requiring a combat engineering vehicle to tow the tank away. And in a final act of malice or incompetence, the FBI fired incendiary gas canisters using a grenade launcher into the structure, as if it needed any more gas. The more conspiratorial among us might wonder if it was actually the incendiary mechanism that they were after, because the caustic mixture of flammables inside went ablaze.
Whoa.
These canisters were fired from near the tanks, which set at least one of their gas pumps on fire.
Right.
Several of these gas grenades with an incendiary mechanism were found expended within the compound's rubble afterwards. According to the local fire marshal, the several holes that had been torn in the compound served as air tunnels to quickly intensify the fire, like a potbelly stove.
I don't think for one fucking minute it's incompetence. I think that this engineered. They knew exactly what they were doing. They got tired of it. They got tired of being there. And they just killed everybody and burned it the fuck down. That's what the government did. That's what the fucking ATF did. That's what the FBI did. That's what the fucking federal government did. They got tired of it and they just fucking burned it down. They crushed everybody and burned it down with all the people inside and went like this and on to the next fucking thing.
It was a windy day, and in his opinion, without flammables at all, even the smallest fire within would spread rapidly out of control.
And they did it on a windy day, knowing
impossible to extinguish. And that's exactly what happened. Burned as the media looked on in horror from 2 miles away through their telephoto lenses. A few people managed to scamper out on the right side of the building. They were burnt, but alive. The fire raged on, and it looked like
this is when that Thibodeau guy came out. Big man.
Survive. But then there was a moment of relief as reporters saw 20 to 30 people exiting the building.
What we know is on the flip side that there are between 25 and 30 survivors.
With our long-range camera, we did see some people scurrying out. We couldn't tell how many. It was shortly after that that we heard that there were 20 people who had come out. It was after that that we heard from the Justice Department over the wires that they were saying there were only 8. They are probably being careful and understating things for the beginning. Let's hope so.
What they couldn't see from their angle, and what the FLIR camera above could, was what looked suspiciously like 2 men shooting in the direction of the people coming out. But at least one of them heard it. And maybe you can too.
Wow. Here's
Did you hear that? I don't know.
This is a really, really good fucking documentary with a lot of information. It's called 51 Days in Waco, the story of the Branch Davidians. After I'm done with the live stream, I'll go back and edit. I'm gonna put this in the links so you guys can go back and watch it. This is a really good expose of what the fuck really happened.
As hard as this particular fire may have been to put out, nobody would get a chance to try because when the fire units approached the scene to help put out the blaze, they were not permitted to do so by the FBI for their own safety. Assuming this was referring to possible gunfire coming from within and not the fires that they were trained to put out. It's interesting that this had not stopped the ATF from calling in their own ambulances during the first day of the raid, when both sides were firing wildly at one another. As a final fuck you to the Branch Davidians, they replaced the Branch Davidian flag that burnt off the flagpole with an ATF flag. As the fire burned itself out and came to a whimper, the FBI's tanks were used to push all the debris into the center like a massive fire pit. A gross dereliction of duty, as this was clearly destruction of evidence and the most egregious contamination of a crime scene that one could imagine.
Why? Why do that?
81
Obviously.
Branch Davidians would die
81.
on April 19th, 1993. The 9 people that managed to escape were grabbed by authorities, treated on the spot, and arrested. They, and many of the other people that came out of the compound during the 51 days, would receive between 5 and 40 years. The official story given was that over the 51 days, not a single FBI agent fired a shot, and no ATF agents fired from the helicopters during the initial raid. And on the final conclusion, it was the Branch Davidians who set the fire within, and those that didn't die from the fire
They still say that to
committed
this day.
suicide. But there's a few oddities to this story. Many autopsies show death by blunt force trauma, body mutilation, or gunshots to the torso, and many of these come out in the House investigation of the Waco siege in 1995. Initially, 2 ATF agents were caught lying about their stories and were fired, but when they threatened to talk and break their gag order, they were quickly rehired by the agency.
As far as you can tell, correct?
That's correct.
And that
I didn't know that.
These people, these 2 gentlemen lied, and that they lied to
I didn't know that.
investigators, and that they changed documents, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And yet you rehired them.
Fuck you.
We did rehire them back.
Fuck
I think,
you.
As you're aware, under the civil service rules, if an individual is fired for cause, they have that opportunity to appeal to the Merit Systems Protection Board, at which time the decision can be taken out of our hands. We believed it was in the best interest of the government to rehire those individuals, keeping in mind that we rehired them no longer as supervisory special agents, no
Fuck
longer
you.
with the authority to lead special agents,
And
or
you,
to
and
carry a
you,
gun or make
and
arrests.
you,
You did rehire them.
and
We
you,
all know those facts were true.
Yes, sir.
and you.
With regard to each man, you stated that you found that the charges warranted removal from federal service, and that, quote, a lesser penalty would be inadequate, and that removal is necessary to promote the efficiency of the federal service. Mr. Sarabin had honored a, quote, gag order imposed by Director McGaugh, but that if he was removed from the federal service, he would talk. And in fact, Agent Winowski himself told you that he has another side to the story that has not come out, but that he believed that it was in the best interests of the VATF not to go forward with the story, and he mentioned a specific incident, and he had stated that the most critical parts of the incidents were witnessed by himself, Kavanaugh, Sarabin, and Royster, and he said, quote, the successful prosecution of the Branch Davidians is all they have left to offer. I ask you, Mr. Black, what did they know that, in their view, could have undermined the prosecution, and that they would keep quiet about if they were rehired? You don't know what that is?
I don't know what that is. No, sir.
Bullshit.
The ATF also tried to use Robert Rodriguez, their undercover agent, as a scapegoat until he sued them and got them to admit that he did everything he could.
Man, know what I told him, and they knew exactly what I meant. And instead of coming up and admitting to the American people right after the raid that they had made a mistake, that the element of surprise had been lost, that the agent had advised them that they knew they were coming. Instead of doing that, they lied to the public. And in doing so, they just about destroyed a very great agency.
Another oddity would be that Paul Gray, the chief fire investigator for Waco, used to office in the same building as the ATF, where his wife worked. There was one underage girl named Carrie Jewell who came out saying that she was molested by Koresh, but her mother was there and she did not agree. She testified against Mark Bro when he gave his initial statements, and we know how honest that goofy-eyed guy is. The FLIR footage I showed tonight was completely ignored by the investigation committee, led by Chuck Schumer. Many people showed up to protest the treatment of the Branch Davidians, but you might be interested to know that one of them was a man named Timothy McVeigh. And the last oddity I'm going to get into tonight, for all you people looking to add your Clinton body count, wouldn't it be interesting to know that these three men entering the window in the initial raid all perished, and they were all presidential bodyguards for Bill.
No shot.
It'd be nice to know what happened to them, but unfortunately, this is how the video was released, with the awkward cut